Here we go, Algebra 2 students. This is another Regents review video. This is the Algebra 2 Common Core exam for January 2018. These are going to be the solutions to Part 1, questions 13 through 24. This is the second half of the multiple choice section. Before we begin, as usual, do not cheat. I said it. If you've been watching my videos since Algebra 1, Geometry, whenever you started watching these things, I say it every single time, and you know how annoyed I get when people do this. Don't cheat. Don't do it. I am so sick of people failing these exams when they're passable. Do not cheat. You know a lot of math. Go ahead and try the problems by yourself. If you're having problems, then, of course, come back and watch my videos. I'd be more than happy to help you. But just to do it, to get homework done, that's still not worth your time or mine. Make sure that you hit that subscribe button down below. Consider becoming a patron on my Patreon page. I would greatly appreciate the financial support because I want to keep the channel going for many, 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 many years to come. And make sure that you visit my website at www.nysmathregentsprep.com for math content in Algebra 2 and your future mathematical subjects. You can see a lot of cool stuff for Algebra 2 on my website. And I use the TI Inspire CX calculator. That link could also be found on my website. All of these links can be found in the description below. To get the calculator, just links you right to Amazon or the Texas Instruments page for the calculator software for your computer. Without further ado, let's begin. Number 13. This is the second half of the multiple choice section, and I must say, just by going through these one more time, these are a little bit more challenging. Number 13 says, if AE raised to the BT equals C, where A, B, and C are positive, then T equals what? So essentially, forget all this hoopla. They're asking you solve for T. That's all they're asking you to do, right? So take this and solve for T. Now, I will tell you that A, B, and C are positive. That's important for mathematicians and math teachers and the state, because if they didn't say that, then it would completely change the answer because you can't have negative logarithms. But for our purposes, solve for T. That's it. Okay, let's go ahead and solve for T. Eventually, we're going to be using logarithms, I'll tell you right now, because T is locked inside of the exponent. And we know that when we are solving for variables in the exponent, we have to use logarithms, right? So, I'm going to divide by A. A is a constant. It's a positive constant. So, divide by A on both sides. We get e to the bt equals c divided by A. Keep on going. Take this, take the bt, and move it down in the front of E. Now, when you do that, you have to write the word log, or in this case, ln. Why am I using ln? Because all the answers are in ln. ln and log essentially mean the same thing at your mathematics level. So this is bt, the natural log of E, is equal to c divided by A. But is that technically correct? No, it's not, because you need to write ln in front of this too. The reason why is what you do to one side of the equation, you must do to the other side of the equation. So this is technically the natural log of c divided by A, right? So now let's go ahead and solve for T. Well, the natural log of E, it's actually nice to cancel. Cancel out, and we get that to be 1, because the natural log of E is 1. And if you don't know why, then just go back and watch the previous video of this exam, questions 1 through 12. There was another question that involved natural logarithm of E. But essentially, the natural logarithm has a base of E. E raised to the first power gives you E. That's why the natural logarithm of E is 1. So, we are now going to solve for T. We are going to divide by the letter B. Divide by the letter B. And we get T is equal to the natural log of C divided by A, all divided by B. I'll put those in parentheses because that is what it is in the answer choice. So your answer for this question is going to be choice, let's see what I have here, choice 3. There we go. And if you got fooled with choice 4, I don't blame you, because that was a tricky answer, but there shouldn't be a natural logarithm in front of that B because we move that down. The natural logarithm should go after the exponent that we move down. So your answer is going to be choice 3. Moving on to number 14. For which values of x rounded to the nearest hundredth will the absolute value of x squared minus 9 minus 3 equal the log base 3 of x? So this is strictly a calculator question. Strictly calculator. So I'm going to go to my graphing calculator. And now that it just occurred to me, I forgot to change this into degree mode from last video. So I need to go ahead and do that. I'm going to go ahead to my graph page. And I am going to type in the absolute value of x squared minus 9 minus 3. Down arrow that. And I have the log base 3 of x. Yep, cool. So I clearly see two intersection points here and here. Okay, cool. So go ahead and go to menu. Go to analyze graph and click on intersection. We need to click before and after that point. We got that intersection point. And do it again. Menu, analyze graph, intersection point, click before and after. So they're asking for the values of x. The values of x are 2.29 and 3.63. 2.29 and 3.63. Your answer is going to be choice 1. Not too bad of a question. I'm actually going to take a picture of this and put it on my page. For those of you using headphones, mute me for a second. I don't know if I turn off the volume because it'll make a large clicky sound. Yep, there it is. Okay. So I'm going to go and paste this. You don't need any justification on your Regents exam. I just need to show that for all of you viewers out there. So those are your answers, 2.29 and 3.63. Your answer is choice 1. Moving on to number 15. I love these questions. Love these questions. These are good questions. But most of you hate them. The terminal side of theta, an angle in standard position, intersects the unit circle at p, negative 1/3, and negative square root of 8 divided by 3. What is the value of secant of theta? Most of you are probably like, dude, I don't even know what you just said. I don't know where to begin. You got to help me here. So I'd be more than happy to show you what to do. First things first, you have to draw a unit circle. Okay. Now, if you don't know what the unit circle is by now, you're in trouble. The unit circle is a circle drawn on the xy plane, and it has a radius of the number 1. Now, I'm going to draw it a little bit bigger just to emphasize of what I'm talking about. So, the radius of the unit circle is the number 1. Great. Now, take a look at point P. Point P is terminating at the point negative 1/3 negative radical 8 over 3. Now, notice here, and nothing's changed in mathematics. This is still your x value. This is still your y value. What quadrant is x negative and y negative? Well, that's quadrant 3. So this point is intersecting the unit circle. So it's somewhere on the unit circle. I'm going to put that right over here. It doesn't really matter, but it's intersecting within quadrant 3. So what does that create for us? Well, that creates a triangle in quadrant 3. So I'm going to draw my radius from the origin to that green dot. I am then going to draw my x value right over here, and I'm going to draw my y value right over here. Okay? So what I just created is a right triangle. That's a right triangle. And this, ladies and gentlemen, that point is the point negative 1/3 negative square root of 8 divided by 3. Now, what does that do for us? It says, what is the value of secant of theta? Well, the terminal side of theta, which is an angle in standard position. So this is actually theta right over here. So everything actually goes back to geometry here, folks. This is a right triangle terminating in quadrant 3. And we have a acute angle theta in standard position. You do know that trigonometry is the study of triangles? Yeah, so it all goes back to geometry, and this is technically trigonometry because you're using sine, cosine, and tangent. So, as I said before, this is your x value, this is your y value. Well, I should further mention that this is your x-axis, this is your y-axis. Well, if the x value is negative 1/3, then the red value that you see here is actually negative 1/3. You're going a horizontal distance to the left by negative 1/3 units. Now the y value, you're going down by negative square root of 8 over 3 units. So that's not hard at all. So let's go ahead and label this as negative square root of 8 over 3. Good so far? I hope we are. And the radius, or the hypotenuse in this case, is the number 1. Remember from geometry, a radius is drawn from the center of the circle to a point on the circle. And in this case, it is the unit circle, which automatically has a radius of the number 1. This is all very important information, folks. So, now that we got our diagram correct, because everything's correct in the diagram, what in the world is secant of theta equivalent to? Well, secant of theta, you should know that secant of theta is the same thing as saying 1 over cosine of theta. But, we know that the cosine of theta from geometry is adjacent over the hypotenuse. Well, secant is just the reciprocal of adjacent over hypotenuse. Secant is equivalent to the hypotenuse over the adjacent side. This, ladies and gentlemen, is your secant ratio. So the hypotenuse is 1. So far, your secant of theta is your hypotenuse, which is 1, divided by the adjacent side of theta. Now, the adjacent side of theta is negative 1/3. So that's just going to be negative 1 over 3. Now, how do we put this into a form that we like? Well, this is an LCD. Multiply by 3 on both the top and the bottom. That just cancels. And we get 3 divided by negative 1, which is just the same thing as negative 3. So that should be your answer, but we have to double check everything. And the reason why they might trick you with an answer of positive 3, but there is no answer of positive 3. I'm just saying just in case. You have to remember the acronym. All students take calculus. In quadrant 3, only tangent and cotangent is positive. Every other trigonometric function is negative, and secant and cosine are directly related because secant is a reciprocal of cosine, and they're both negative in quadrant 3. So we know for sure that our answer should be negative, and since I just told you that, your answer is going to be choice 1 for that question. Honestly, how hard was that? Some of you might think that that is the hardest thing in the world, but I hope that that was helpful because those are one of the more challenging questions that just require your expertise at the unit circle. Just drawing your diagram is probably the hardest part of that question. Moving on to number 16. What is the equation of the directrix of the parabola? Negative 8 times y minus 3 equals x plus 4 squared. So you should know by now that the directrix formula is y is equal to k minus p. That's important information to get this question right. So, what I need to do is take this quadratic and put it into a form that I like. Well, I like the form of y equals 1 over 4p times x minus h squared plus the value of k. Let's go ahead and put it in the form that I like. So, I need to rewrite this real quick. Negative 8 times y minus 3 equals x plus 4 squared. Cool. I am first going to divide by negative 8 on both sides. Divide by negative 8. We get y minus 3 is equal to negative 1/8 times x plus 4 quantity squared. I'm then going to add that 3 on both sides. And we get y is equal to negative 1 over 8 times x plus 4 squared plus the value of 3. So this is the form that I like and appreciate. So, we're not quite there yet. We're almost there. This is the same thing as saying y is equal to negative 1 over 4 times 2. Times 2, actually. Oh, let me alter it a little bit down here. Because I just realized something, that my equation is positive 1 over 4p, and since this is negative, I am going to rewrite this a little bit differently. This is y equals positive 1 over 4 times negative 2. I'm going to be careful with that. It's actually negative 2 times x plus 4 squared plus 3. Now, we have all of our information. From this equation, we could easily determine the value of p, k, and h. Well, p is negative 2. H is negative 4. And your k value is 3. Some of you might be saying to yourself, how in the world did you get h to be negative 4? It's positive right there. Can't you read? Of course I can read. But you have to understand that this is a horizontal shift to the left by 4 units. So it's actually technically negative. And the reason why is if you go back up here, this is x minus h. Well, how do you get from a negative to a positive? Well, your number has to be negative in order to get a positive answer. So this is really x minus a negative 4, which results in positive 4. So that's why h is going to be negative 4 in that case. So good. We have all this information. Let's go ahead and plug it into what we know. We know that the equation of the directrix is in the form of y equals k minus p. So we have y is equal to the value of k, which we have as 3, minus the value of p, which is negative 2. Ooh, good thing I was careful with that thing. So these we just add, and we get y is equal to the number 5. Ladies and gentlemen, that is the answer to this question. Your answer is choice 1. Now, let's just say you forgot most of that stuff. No big deal. Go to your graphing calculator. Go to your graph page. Go to menu. Go to graph entry edit and go to relation. Make sure that your calculator is updated as much as possible because some of you might not have it. You might have like a really, really outdated 2-year-old calculator that hasn't been updated since. So make sure that you have that relation button. And I'm literally going to type in exactly what I see on the paper. Okay. And we have this. So you're probably thinking to yourself, what in the world does that do for us, Trevor? Well, I'd be more than happy to tell you. A quadratic is actually a conic section. So if you go to menu and go to analyze graph and go to analyze conics and you click on directrix, and if you click on this, hey, look at that. It tells you that the directrix is y equals 5. So that's how you get your answer literally within 30 seconds. Moving on to number 17. All right, the function below models the average price of gas in a small town since January 1st. G of t equals negative 0.0049 t to the fourth and all that other stuff, where 0 is less than or equal to t, which is less than or equal to 10. If G of t is the average price of gas in dollars and t represents the number of months since January 1st, the absolute maximum G of t reaches over the given domain is about what? So, the first thing that you need to do is understand that it's asking you on an interval, a specified interval from 0 to 10 months. And we are going to go ahead and graph G of t on our graphing calculator. So we need to take our time graphing this appropriately. Let's go ahead and do that now. So I'm going to take my time with this. So we have negative 0.0049 x to the fourth. Now make sure that you type in x because you can't type in t into your calculator. It's not going to work. Plus 0.0923 x to the third power minus 0.56 x squared plus 1.166 x plus 3.23. Enter. Okay, so here we have a very weird looking graph. Not too bad, but we're going from 0 to 10. So go to menu, Windows Zoom, Windows Settings. I'm going from x equals 0 to x equals 10. Click OK. So we're going from here all the way to here. So where's your maximum point? It's got to be either in this vicinity or this vicinity. I can't really tell which one's larger, so I'm just going to do two answers. So go to menu, analyze graph, maximum, click before and after. Nice. So the maximum here is $4.01, and then go to menu, analyze graph, maximum, just to ensure that this one's less than this, or if it's greater than, then that's the answer over here. So your maximum over here is $3.92. So obviously $4.01 is greater than $3.92. So in this case, your answer is going to be $4.01. That's choice 3. That was strictly a calculator question. All right, moving on to number 18, written in simplest form. C squared minus D squared divided by D squared plus CD minus 2C squared, where C cannot equal D, is equivalent to what? So, basically, we need to factor as best as we possibly can. So, C squared minus D squared, that is factorable by the difference of two perfect squares. That is going to be C plus D, C minus D. Okay? Now over here, D squared plus CD minus 2C squared, well, what is that going to factor to? Well, I know that the coefficient or the letter up front is going to be D, because we know that D times D has to be D squared. I know that by the FOIL method. So I know that these both have to be D's. But what goes on the inside here? Well, we have a negative 2c squared. Well, I know that a c and a c has to go here. And it has to add to positive CD. So I know that one of them is going to be plus, and the other one is going to be minus. But there's a 2 here, okay? This over here, this is just d squared minus c squared. That's the difference of two perfect squares. We need to figure out something else that goes here. Well, there's a 2. Put in a 2 here. Now, you need to verify the information. Does a 2 go in that binomial, or does the 2 go in the other binomial? Well, let's go ahead and verify this information. Go ahead and FOIL this out. This is honestly just a guess and check method. There really is no other way to get it. So this is d squared. D times negative c is negative cd. 2c times d is positive 2cd. And 2c minus c is minus c. No, sorry, not minus c. Minus 2c. C squared. So when you combine like terms, we get d squared plus cd minus 2c squared, and that is absolutely true, and it matches up here. So we know that we factored it correctly. That's good. That's a good thing. So let's go ahead and further simplify this. Okay, we're almost done, believe it or not. So when we simplify this, c minus d and d minus c are actually simplifiable, but the problem is these are opposites of each other, and subtraction is not commutative. So when we cross these out, one of these has to get the negative 1. Okay? They are almost the same. We just have to make one of them to be negative 1 because that's what happens when we cancel it out. So your answer is going to be negative times c plus d over d plus 2c. Well, we have a problem. None of these answers matches this yet. We're going to get there. Distribute that negative 1. When you distribute that negative 1, we get negative c minus d over d plus 2c. Choice 3 looks rather promising to me. And that is because it is the same exact answer. Good. Your answer is choice 3. Moving on to number 19. If p of x equals 2x to the third minus 3x plus 5, what is the remainder of p of x divided by x minus 5? So they're asking you for the remainder. They're specifically asking for the remainder. So you have two options. Either you can do synthetic division, because this is in the form of x minus a. Just understand when you do synthetic division, in the lower right-hand corner, that's going to be your remainder. Or you could actually use the remainder theorem. Honestly, I would use the remainder theorem. Seems most appropriate, right? So how do you do the remainder theorem? Well, if you have a binomial in the form of x minus a, set it equal to 0 and solve. So this is x minus 5, set it equal to 0, we get x is equal to 5. So we're going to take that 5, plug it in for p of x. All right, so you have p of 5 is equal to 2 times 5 to the third minus 3 times 5 plus 5. Well, what happens when we simplify this? Let's see here. This is 2 times 5 to the third. That's going to be 2 times 125, which is 350, minus 15 plus 5. And that's going to yield a result of... That's not 350. Hold on one second. What is 5 to the third? Isn't it 125? 3x plus 5. I'm pretty sure... you know what? Forget it. The answer is 240. I'm lazy. Your answer is choice 4. I'm just going to go in and verify that I'm not crazy. Because if I'm not mistaken, isn't 5 to the third 125 times 2? Why was I saying 250? Sorry, 350. It's 250. Stupid Trevor, right? It's 250. Yeah, it's 250 plus 5 minus 15. That does give you an answer of 240. All right, there you go. Your answer is choice 4. Moving on to number 20. Oh, I don't like these questions because they are wordy. So number 20 says the results of simulating tossing a coin 10 times, recording the number of heads, and repeating this 50 times are shown on the graph below. Based on the results of the simulation, which statement is false? Okay. So I am actually going to count, call me crazy, but you actually need to count these dots. There's 1 dot here, there's 3 dots here, there's 10 dots here, there's 7 dots here, there's 13 dots here, there's 7, 3, 4, and 2. And no, I did not count that fast. I have the numbers written on my paper. So, yeah, that's good. So, we have this, and it's asking you all of these questions, right? So, let's go ahead and figure this out. So, it says, based on the results of the simulation, which statement's false? Choice 1 says 5 heads occurred most often, which is consistent with the theoretical probability of obtaining a head. Or heads. Okay, I'm not sure what that means yet. Choice 2 says 8 heads is unusual as it falls outside the middle 95% of the data. Obtaining 3 heads or fewer occur 28% of the time, or 7 heads is not unusual as it falls within the middle 95% of the data. So I see things here that say 95%. So here's a suggestion. Why don't we go ahead and find the 95% interval, right? Which is, you should know this by now, that the 95% confidence level is the same thing as saying the mean, plus or minus 2 standard deviations. So we're going to go to our calculator and type in, all of these. We're going to type all this stuff into our calculator. Go to your lists and spreadsheets. I'm going to type in the number of heads, and this is the frequency. Unfortunately, I can't type it. I don't know why I can't type in frequency in the calculator. I can only type in freak. So, the number of heads. So we have 1, 3, 10, 7, 13, 7, 3, 4, 2. And the frequency, I'm so stupid. That should be the other column. 1, 3, my apologies. I'm copying this over real quick. This should just be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Oh, make sure you put in 0 for 10 or else you get the whole question wrong. So just make sure that you put in 10 as well. So do control doc, add a calculator, menu, statistics, stat calculations, one variable statistics, click OK. Your X list is number of heads, your frequency list is the frequency, and we have this information. Sweet. So, okay. Your minimum is 1, your maximum is 9, and your median is 5. Cool. So I'm going to go ahead and copy this information, and I am going to put it on my screen page there. So, again, for those of you headphone users, silence me for a moment because it's going to be loud. Here we go. Sweet. Okay, so I'm going to go back, and I'm going to just basically put in this data. Come on. There we go. Okay. So we have this. Now we're going to analyze this data very critically here. Let's go through it piece by piece. And I know that's not big enough. So, here we go. Choice 1 says 5 heads occurred most often, which is consistent with the theoretical probability of obtaining a heads. Yeah, that should make sense. You should be getting 5 heads out of 10 flips, okay? Because if you're not getting 5s most often, then chances are the coin is not a fair coin. But that's good so far. That is actually a true statement. We're looking for the one that's false. Choice 2 says 8 heads is unusual, as it falls outside the middle 95% of data. Well, if you look here, the mean is 4.86, right? The mean is 4.86. The standard deviation is 1.87 or 1.9 if you want to round it off a little bit more. But I usually round to 2 decimal places. In that case, it would be 1.88. So if I take the mean and I add 2 standard deviations, I'm actually going to get 8.612. And if I take the mean minus 2 standard deviations, I get an answer of 1.108. Well, here's the question. Is 8 heads unusual because it falls outside the middle 95% of data? Really? I just proved to you that since the 95% confidence level or confidence interval is the mean plus or minus 2 standard deviations, and I just showed that the mean plus 2 standard deviations is 8.612, isn't 8 heads less than 8.612? Yeah. So that is actually a false statement, because what it should say is, it shouldn't say outside, it's inside. So if that said inside, then that would be a true statement. But since it says outside, that is a false statement, which is what we wanted in the first place. Let me explain why the other two answers are not true. Some of you might be curious. Obtaining 3 heads or fewer occur 28% of the time. All you're doing is you're taking 10 plus 3 plus 1, that equals 14, and you're dividing it by 10. No, I'm sorry, not 10, 50, which is 28%, 0.28, right? And 7 heads is not unusual because it falls within. Yes, that's true, because it does fall within the standard deviation that I was talking about, and it is not unusual. That's normal. Good. So your answer is choice 2 for that question. Number 21, what is the inverse of f of x is equal to negative 6 times x minus 2? So the first thing that I want you to understand is, in order for something to have an inverse, it has to pass both the horizontal and the vertical line test. Well, this is a line, so of course it does pass the horizontal and the vertical line test, because the slope is not undefined. If it was undefined, then it wouldn't pass the vertical line test. But this is a line where the slope of negative 6, we're good to go. Okay, so we could definitely find the inverse of this. So the general rule is you switch the x and y, solve for y. So let's go ahead and do that right now. I'm going to replace f of x to be y. So we have y is equal to negative 6 times x minus 2. Switch the x and the y. So you have x is equal to negative 6 times y minus 2. Solve for y. Distribute that negative 6. We get x is equal to negative 6y plus 12. Continuing to solve for y, we subtract that 12 on both sides. We get x minus 12 is equal to negative 6y. Divide by that negative 6 on both sides. And we get, that looks like a positive sign, negative. And we get y, which is really now y inverse. You could write it as y inverse, but really, we're big boys and girls here. It's really f inverse of x. This is going to be x minus 12 over negative 6. Now, there are other ways to write this. One way is to just do I heart division. This is really saying negative 1 over 6x plus 2. We could also say that this is the same thing as saying 2 plus negative, actually, not 2 plus. Well, I mean, we technically can, but this is really 2 minus x over 6. And I think that that's the answer that they put here. Yes, that is choice 2. And again, just do the I heart division process and you get right back to this answer. Your answer is choice 2. Moving on to number 22. Brian deposited 1 cent into an empty, non-interest bearing bank account on the first day of the month. Who would choose a bank like that? I don't get it. Then he additionally deposited 3 cents on the second day, 9 cents on the third day, and 27 cents on the fourth day. What would be the total amount of money in the account at the end of the 20th day? The 20th day if the pattern continued. So, this is clearly, and if you don't know by now, this is clearly a geometric sequence, because he's taking 1 cent and then 3, 9, 27. He's multiplying by 3. So, but we're trying to find the total amount. That should be ringing in your head. We're trying to find the summation of the geometric series in this case. And if you go back up to your reference sheet, we're using, where's the formula? We are using the geometric series formula. This is the sum of the geometric series. S sub n is equal to a sub 1 minus a sub 1 r to the n divided by 1 minus r. So that is important information. All right, so let's go back here. So S sub n is equal to, why did I just lose my, sorry, a sub 1 minus, why am I forgetting the formula? What did I just blank out? Minus a sub 1 r to the n all over 1 minus r. Yes. Okay, good. Minus a sub 1 r to the n divided by n minus r minus 1, not n. r minus 1. Okay. No, 1 minus r. What's wrong with me? 1 minus r. Jeez, is it just me or... Nah, it's late. It's 2:30 in the morning. Okay, so, how do we do it? We're trying to find the 20th day. Great. So the 20th day is S sub 20 is equal to the first term, which is 1 cent. Now, they're asking you about money. dollar amounts. What is 1 cent expressed as a dollar amount? Be careful. That's 0.01. That's 1 cent, ladies and gentlemen. Now this is minus 0.01 times the rate, not the rate, the common ratio. Sorry, I forgot about that too. The common ratio, as I said before, we're multiplying by 3. So this is 3 to the n, which is 20, divided by 1 minus 3, because your common ratio is 3. So if you type this into your calculator, you should be getting your answer. Let's go ahead and type it in to the calculator. Control division, 0.01 minus 0.01 times 3 raised to the 20th power divided by 1 minus 3. And Brian is a very, 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 very rich man. Are you kidding me? I wish I had a bank account like that. 17,443,922. Why can't I be that wealthy? Your answer for this question is choice 2. Moving on to 23. If the function g of x is equal to ab raised to the x represents exponential growth, okay, which statement about g of x is false? Okay. So a and b, newsflash, a and b must be positive. They must be positive, and b has to be greater than the number 1. Because of its if it is exponential growth, you can't just say both a and b needs to be positive. It has to be a must be greater than 0, positive, and b has to be greater than 1, because if b is a fraction that's less than the number 1 but greater than the number 0, in between 0 and 1, non-inclusive, for example, if it's like 1/2, that's exponential decay. So that's important stuff. Choice 1, a is greater than 0 and b is greater than 1. That is absolutely true. So that's not the answer. That has to be satisfied for it to be exponential growth. That's true. Choice 2, the y-intercept is 0, a. Yes, because if you plug in when x equals 0, right? When you plug in x equals 0 into this equation of g of x is equal to ab to the x. If you make this x 0, b to the 0 is just the number 1. 1 times a is a, and g of 0 is just going to be a, and that's 0a. So that's good. That is actually true. That is a true statement. Choice 3. The asymptote is y equals 0 all the time. Yes. For this case, yes. Choice 4. The x-intercept. I don't even care what the x-intercept is. Weep, whoop, weep, whoop. That is not okay. That is not okay. This is a no-no. Since when does an exponential function that's exponential growth, where it has absolutely no vertical shift, has an x-intercept? That is false information right there. The x-intercept is not b, 0. The only way that an exponential growth function could possibly have an x-intercept is if it is translated down by so many units. That would be true then. But this is false information for this statement. So your answer is choice 4. Moving on to the last question, number 24. At her job, Pat earns $25,000 for the first year and receives a raise of $1,000 each year. The explicit formula for the nth term of the sequence is a sub n is equal to 25,000 plus n minus 1 times 1,000. Which rule best represents the equivalent recursive formula? So recursion means that they have to give you the first term and then give you a formula. Choices 1 and 2, these show explicit somewhat. These are not recursive because they don't give you the first term. Okay. So why am I spelling that with 2 S's? It's 1 S. Recursive. Over on the right-hand side, choices 3 and 4, these are both recursive. And the only slight difference is this a sub n minus 1 and a sub n plus 1. And if you know your recursive formulas for a arithmetic sequence from the Facts You Must Know code for the Regents exam study guide that I have on my website, you're given a sub 1 and a sub n is always a sub n minus 1 plus d. I do not know where they're getting n plus 1 from. So the best one that represents it, your answer is going to be choice 3. It's not n plus 1, it's n minus 1. And of course, you could do some guess and check in there. For example, let me give you a perfect example. Suppose you want to find a sub 2, right? A sub 2, well, that's just going to be a sub 2 plus 1 plus 1,000. Well, what's a sub 3? Huh? We're not given a sub 3. We're given a sub 1, people. That's why it always has to be n minus 1 for recursion, because we're not given the next term. We're given the previous term. And if you apply the same thing that I just said up to this one, well, a sub 2, that's just going to be a sub 2 minus 1 plus 1,000. Well, that's a sub 1 plus 1,000. Hey, we have a sub 1. It's 25,000. So it's 25,000 plus 1,000 is 26,000. So that works. Your answer is choice 3 for that question. All right, that is the conclusion of this video. I hope that it was helpful. Make sure that you hit that subscribe button down below. Consider becoming a patron on my Patreon page, and visit my website at www.nysmathregensprep.com for more math content in Algebra 2 and your future mathematical subjects. And I hope to see you soon.